are familiar with my work know that I have a background, a long-standing background in broadcasting through radio, as well as television, and as a writer for Examiner.com for the past 4.5 years, through which my written work received widespread distribution internationally throughout the major English-speaking media, including publications such as Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Huffington Post, the Irish Independent. Many publications carried my stories as they appeared in that column under the auspices of what is now known as Journalism 2.0, in which the citizen journalist receives access to publishing platforms and syndication that in previous decades or centuries has only been allocated to the professional publishing or journalistic newspaper world. The access to AP or Reuters syndication was only available if you were on staff with the New York Times, the Washington Post. We are in the new Journalism 2.0 era, and I have been exploring the potential of that, coming from a background with intensive experience in radio, where I was a feature producer for CBS at one time in the early part of the century. So with this background and understanding, appreciation for news, and all of the topics that are worthy of exploration in our world, I made an editorial decision to undertake a study of Bill Cosby's exchange with the Associated Press. The Associated Press had interviewed Mr. Cosby earlier this month in a discussion of the artworks that they had loaned to the Smithsonian Museum of Afro-American Art. And during that taped interview, the AP reporter also engaged Mr. Cosby in questions related to allegations of sexual abuse and rape that had surfaced in the last 6 weeks or so, in which there are now 15 claimants or more who have stepped forwards and stating that they had been raped or sexually assaulted by Bill Cosby, with the earliest claim now, I think, extending back to as far back as 1965. And so there is a tremendous amount of furor around Bill Cosby's conduct over previous decades. Fans and well-wishers, people like myself who had grown up on Bill Cosby-fueled media, who had watched Fat Albert when we were children, are shocked and dismayed to see such allegations come forward. And yet it is our duty to attempt to make sense of this story. And again, my editorial instincts drove me to the AP release, because this was an interview that had been taped in early November, but they had withheld portions of the interview in which they had asked Mr. Cosby about sexual assault allegations, in which he declined to speak on. Sensing a change in the mood of the nation, the AP subsequently released their materials on November 19th. And Mr. Cosby spoke on camera to these allegations. His answer was diffusive. He did not speak directly to counter the claims or make any sort of formal statement, but he did vocalize. And from my form of investigative analysis, those vocalizations served as a premise for a very interesting study and a newsworthy study. I determined this was a time to pursue that story. And so again, as somebody who had covered presidential elections, serial murders, acts of war on international news media, I had been featured, my studies had been featured in international news media for years prior to my entering into the Examiner.com fold. My instincts were still alert and active, and I undertook to report the news as I saw fit. And so I chose this story based on the November 19th Associated Press release of video. The timeline of events that followed was that I completed my article and video, which I published on Examiner.com under my column, The Vancouver UFO Examiner, associated with my YouTube video on November 20th, that very morning. And in the course of conducting that publication process, I was also distributing the article through social media, Facebook, Google+, all the different places where my work may appear. And in the course of posting to Facebook, I was receiving comments from readers about what are called 404 errors, which meant that the article would not load upon clicking the link, which seemed odd. From my side, as I was still logged into my administrative access to Examiner.com, the article continued to load. But for end users, there appeared to be a problem, and I received more than one report of this. So I logged out of the administrative side and went in as an end user to the site and saw that I was receiving the 404 error as well. The article, in the hour or so in which it had remained on the site, it had been reviewed by the editorial staff, who had indicated in writing that the article was approved for newsworthy status, with the caveat that Examiner.com's quota of Bill Cosby-related sexual assault allegation-related news with Google News had been reached, and they could not forward my article for syndication via Google News, a claim which later proved to be false, and I will get into that. But this caveat was issued along with the newsworthy approval, and so I undertook. I proceeded at that time to continue distributing the article with the understanding that it was green-lighted by professional editorial review staff. I had met the minimum standard for newsworthiness through editorial review, and I could proceed. So I was surprised to see that the article had been pulled. The article title was Bill Cosby's Secret Messages Disclose MKUltra Rape Demon. And upon reinvestigation as to why it was pulled, I saw a note from the reviewers who had gone back and revised their comments, in which they had cited that the article was unpublished due to inappropriate content. And they invited me, upon receipt of that note, to pursue any questions I may have with Examiner's support desk. And so, following receipt of that information, I submitted a ticket to Examiner.com support requesting clarification as to what the review staff had meant by doing this. And upon submission of that ticket, I then received an email, a notice from an individual employed by Examiner.com named Gregory Hunt, who stated that the Vancouver UFO Examiner column had been discontinued, canceled, the account was closed, and that began my inquiry as to what had happened in those few hours of reporting that news. This is the timeline of events that I faced, from determination of newsworthy coverage that deserved to be reported, deserved to be investigated, publication of an article and a video that was at first green-lighted by editorial staff, then a reversal of position that seemed inexplicable, and then complete termination of the column with, as we will see, apparently no really good reasoning or explanation that accompanied that. Now, I have three different hypotheses that I have formulated in an attempt to understand what it is that happened. And the first hypothesis is I refer to as the mistaken identity hypothesis, in which Examiner.com reviewers errantly approved the article, then correctly flagged it for inappropriate content. Now, the status of this hypothesis upon review is that it is provably false, and it is so because there are thousands of incidents of the same language used in my article, or worse, that already appear on the Examiner.com site. If we are going to talk about standards of propriety, we have to understand, and I think this is a very important point, we have to understand that what appears on Examiner.com is the de facto evidentiary content standard of the website. What's on the site represents the Examiner.com standard. That's it. There is really no gray area to confuse us. And so the site provides a Google search tool, and if individuals were to take keywords from my article that appear in the article, which is about 1,000 words long, but that might be a reasonable person might sense that there may be some controversy around the use of that language, and apply the Google search across the Examiner.com website to detect the appearance of those words, they would find thousands of incidents of use of the same or worse language already on the website. So by precedent, it appeared that I was within an appropriate standard for how could it be that Examiner would support thousands of incidents of the same or worse language otherwise, if it wasn't already acceptable. We will get into more detail about the nature of some of this language and how it was used on the site in other incidents. But let me go further into these different hypotheses. The second hypothesis, which I'm willing to explore, is one I call the cognitive dissonance hypothesis, where upon receipt of a support ticket detailing evidence of site-supported inappropriate language, Examiner.com terminated my column as a means of damage control. And we can see that an individual named Sterling Allen, who had written for Examiner.com in 2012 in good faith about alternative energy, had encountered a related incident upon complaining about site content that he felt was inappropriate to accompany the dignity of his newsworthy and scientifically oriented articles. He had concerns about provocative sexually explicit or exploitative content that appeared on the site accompanying his articles. He notified Examiner.com, upon which his column was terminated immediately. So we will talk more about that. So this hypothesis, the cognitive dissonance hypothesis, in other words, the absence of shared values between writers and management, appears plausible. However, it doesn't explain why the article was pulled after it was approved. It doesn't explain that something could meet a standard by professional review and then suddenly not meet the standard. So our third hypothesis, I think, is the most inclusive. This is one that I refer to as operative Cosby, in which Examiner.com responded to pressure from a CIA-like entity, such as that described in the findings of the Church Committee, who described how the CIA currently maintains a network of several hundred foreign individuals around the world who provide intelligence for the CIA and at times attempt to influence opinion through the use of covert propaganda. These individuals provide the CIA with direct access to a large number of newspapers and periodicals, scores of press services and news agencies, radio and television stations, commercial book publishers, and other foreign media outlets. What the Church Committee was saying in 1975, 1976 is that the CIA had effectively infiltrated all the major media. There was a CIA desk inside every television news station, every newspaper, every radio station, every magazine. There was a CIA desk vetting the content and influencing editorial decision makings as to what was published, what was not published, as well as feeding content that would appear as news. We know recently that the FBI was hoaxing, was committing fraud, representing themselves as writers for the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, I believe is the publication, who are infuriated to find out that the FBI used its Post-Intelligencer as a cover and a sting operation. This was reported in the last 2 months. So this scenario exists today, but this was highlighted in 1975, 1976, a generation or longer before today. So what is the state of affairs today if in 1975-76 the Church Committee determined that the CIA had effectively infiltrated all the major media at that time? Now, the status of this hypothesis upon review is that it is highly plausible in that it offers context for an attempt by Examiner.com to silence disclosure of Bill Cosby's CIA MKUltra relationship, which is cited in my article, to silence that disclosure from mainstream news. In other words, that Examiner.com would not serve as a platform for the dissemination of this information. They would not be tagged under scrutiny from other parties. They would not be blamed for propagating these claims. Furthermore, that the act of canceling the column would deny access to their publishing platform, which has been a matter of some importance in that, as my flagship newspaper, so to speak, in the online world, Examiner.com has provided the gateway for new Google News syndication for my articles. And when they implemented their newsworthy approval standards sometime in the past few years, they tabulated numbers, and there's a record that shows that of the hundreds of articles that I've published, at least 100 of them met newsworthy approval. So I received, if not Google's syndication, I received newsworthy recognition for 100 pieces that I wrote and distributed through their site. So this is one of the benefits that I received as one of the authors publishing through that platform. Well, by canceling the column, they have denied me access to that platform, and for now, I do not have the benefit of Google News syndication. And I've clarified earlier in today's talk that under Journalism 2.0, Google News is the Reuters or the Associated Press syndicator of the citizen journalist. It's how my articles get to USA Today. It's how my articles get to Forbes, Irish Independent, Long Island Newsday, Florida, Space Coast, Florida Today. I can go on and on about the publication, the very lengthy list of publications who I've enjoyed syndication to via this distribution platform. Furthermore, Examiner.com has denied me my journalistic affiliation with a recognized news publisher through canceling the column, and they are inflicting economic damages upon me as an author. They will at their discretion continue to run my articles and run ads against those articles and receive revenues, of which I will no longer be part of receiving any share of those monies. So there's an element of economic punitive measures that accompany this as well. Now, I am not a stranger to blacklisting on major media platforms. In 2003, I was blacklisted from Coast to Coast AM for attempting to report Arnold Schwarzenegger's role as a CIA operative prior to the California elections. So due to my more than 1.5 decades experience in media, I am in the privileged position to make assessments about matters of conduct on the part of editorial or managerial staff in terms of censorship and blacklisting, and I am able to identify that this is an instance in which specifically reporting news related to CIA issues by non-controlled individuals, non-official individuals, is subject to results. There are repercussions of censorship and blacklisting that accompany those reports or that function, and I'm able to identify that. And so I find this to be the most plausible of the different hypotheses that I'm willing to explore. But we will go further into the consultative process in which I engaged with Examiner.com management in my attempts to understand their decision making, and we will see that due process was undertaken in attempting to reconcile whatever matters may have been error or difference of opinion that had led to not only the censorship of the article but the cancellation of the column. There was such a process, and I have information to share about that as well. Now, in terms of the weighing the relative value of this column, I would like to emphasize that I brought to bear significant experience in broadcasting to these writings. Again, I had been recognized as a feature producer for CBS Radio prior to 10 years almost prior to beginning this column. I had some sense of what news and media and the public information and free speech meant before I started. We can say that the Vancouver UFO Examiner has been noted internationally for exclusive, original investigative reporting into matters such as UFOs, ET contact, consciousness, paranormal, disclosure, exopolitics, and related mainstream news. And this is evidenced by nearly 100 newsworthy approved articles with widespread distribution and citations in major mainstream news outlets throughout the English-speaking world. Alfred, you have, from time to time, you've seen how some of the articles had been published on sites like MSNBC, for example, when we had exopolitics content running through my column. So you can vouch, and many people have seen this as well. So it stands to reason that there was international editorial recognition for the value of the content. At the same time, I think it's important to consider, I'm presenting that in the course of reporting the news, I've encountered this seeming roadblock or pitfall, And what kind of what do I think? What shapes my sense of what is news? I think we can judge that by evaluating some of the content that I've covered that I think is newsworthy. And just to highlight a few of the topics that I've covered, some of the most significant news stories that appeared first in this column, and this is global first reporting. This is not generic rewrites of something off a newswire or reporting something from another website or a TV show. This is original investigative reporting that appeared first in this column. And this includes reporting on Julian Assange's UFOs, Edward Snowden's psychic human extraterrestrials, Kenneth Arnold's aliens, the ET influence on Canadian politics, extensive coverage of the ESETI Ranch at Mount Adams in Washington, Dennis Hopper's Easy Rider UFO, which was picked up by AOL News, British Black Ops in the Ukraine sniper Maidan conspiracy is entirely original reporting. CIA involvement in the Ottawa shootings. This is entirely original reporting. Secrets of Russian spy Anna Chapman, to show that gave fair and balanced play to both sides of the East-West Cold War equation. Gabriel Gifford's Sarah Palin Dreams, another profound story that was covered in the column. Robert Picton's MKUltra connection, which you and I discussed at great length in our interview together, as well as the CIA Al Gore sting attempt. These stories did not appear in any other outlets. That column served as the distribution point and the environment in which those ideas were incubated and first reported. Many of these stories, as far-reaching as they may sound, many of my reports have received widespread validation for their factual accuracy. The most important point being is that I beat the headlines internationally, reporting news before it met widespread acceptance. And so, by that standard, I pursued these and many other stories. The articles covered substantial amounts of new material and investigative reporting covering Vancouver and British Columbia UFO incidents. And this was supported by multi-camera video evidence. There were many peers, colleagues, and mentors who invested in the foundation, development, and growth of this column, without whom this column would not have been possible. You Alfred Lambert Weber, were a key individual in getting this column started. Andrew D. Bishago acted as a pro bono editor, helping me get my writing on track. Local people like Les Mirza, Charles Lamoureux, people in the southern United States like Dwana Paul. I couldn't have produced Marfa Light's coverage without Dwana Paul. I couldn't have covered Exeter University without Alfred Lambert Weber. All the contributors amongst my peers and colleagues were invaluable in helping to support this. And so this column wasn't just a personal platform for my opinions and ideas. Rather, it served the public interest in a variety of ways, and it brought forward news and stories and a variety of interviews that weren't being done by other outlets. It led on many fronts, and I think that, in other words, my summary is that there was significant and substantial news value in the continuity of that column, something which we will see was obliterated with the stroke of a pen, so to speak, apparently with no due process or consultative process, and under what I describe as a doctrine of unreasonableness. So that is my the gist of my presentation today in terms of what I wish to share with my readers, my viewers, my peers, my colleagues, and mentors about the telling of this tale, this history of this 4.5-year journey and adventure that had led to so many interesting avenues and so much opportunity for insight and sharing, doing work that just was not being done in the field. This column provided a venue for things to happen that were not happening otherwise. I think it's been a marvelous adventure. I've learned a great deal by participating in it, but as we can see, the journey has reached a new level where in the professional career of this column, it has hit the blacklist and we have to attempt, from there to envision a vision, a better and different future. So I come to you today because this is all late breaking. This happened just this past week. I am still formulating that vision about what lies ahead. I still have an established platform on YouTube with a highly viewed channel there, and my website is still up. I still have a significant presence on Facebook. I have lost an affiliate, in other words, through Examiner.com cutting the column. I've lost an affiliation, but I have not lost access to the public. And I think I was writing for the public interest. My greatest goal is that my news reaches the people who can evaluate these ideas and information for themselves. And if I'm successful in doing so, then I think that the purpose of these writings and this work is being done.